With Kirby's Return to Dreamland getting the deluxe treatment, it makes me wonder why HAL Labs chose this game to bring back before any of the other ones. For instance, you have two 3DS games that were heavily loved and there's no other way to play them besides the 3DS. It would have kind of made sense to kind of bring those games back first. But HAL Labs chose the Wii game Return to Dreamland shortly after the Forgotten Land, and I think it might be a reason why they wanted to tell this story again. Based on these story events of the Forgotten Land and Return to Dreamland, I have a theory that maybe these two games are connected more than we think. I also think certain elements of Return to Dreamland might hint at a future Kirby game, but that's for another video. Today, I want to talk about the comparison between Forgotten Land and Return to Dreamland and how they could kind of connect together. Return to Dreamland is one of the very first games we start hearing about some ancients, and we really don't know much about them. All we know is that they created the Master Crown and also the Lor Starcutter, and entrusted Landia, the ruler of Halcondra, to protect them. Even though the story does have big emphasis on this crown and the Lor Starcutter, the main plot of the story is defeating Magolor, who gets consumed by this crown. But the story is made even simpler before getting to Magolor because it involves Kirby and his friends going around Popstar collecting pieces of the Lor Starcutter. But after playing the game, I think a lot of people are going to raise the same question that I think a lot of us Kirby fans still have, is where did the Lor Starcutter come from and where did the Master Crown come from? It's definitely safe to say that both of these, the Lor Starcutter and the Master Crown, were made around the same time and by the same people because they also have these same powers. They're able to open up star rifts to take them throughout different dimensions. Now, once again, I don't think we've ever seen the ancients or where they even came from. Well, that was at least until we got to Kirby in the Forgotten Land, where the Forgotten Land itself could very well be the home of the ancients. Now, I've already made a couple videos talking about this being the case, because there's a lot of evidence that might point towards this place being the original home of the ancients, because we know the ancients had extreme high-end technology, and we see that here with Lab Discovera. But let's start off with the Lor Starcutter. The Lor Starcutter was entrusted to Landia in Halcondra until Magolor was able to steal it. But this ship allows the user to travel through multiple dimensions and has tons of defensive and offensive mechanisms in order to attack its foes. It is also stated that the ship is sentient and is very saddened when it's taken over by Magolor and the Master Crown. But how did the residents of the Forgotten Land make such a powerful ship? Well, we know one day there was an alien creature that invaded this world and started causing havoc amongst everybody for absolutely no reason, and somehow the residents of this Forgotten Land were actually able to capture it and keep it isolated in a containment center. We then know an accident happened in the laboratory which then took the species and separated it into two separate entities, which actually gave us Elfilin. But this species that invaded, Fecto-Elfilus, was extremely powerful, and in fact we don't really see a creature this powerful without the help of some type of ancient technology normally. And we know the residents of the Forgotten Land harnessed this power, which they called the miraculous power, in order to flee with their people out of this land and find the place that they wanted to go all this time, which was then called the Land of Dreams, which could reference Dreamworld because, you know, it's called Dreamworld, so maybe the residents actually fled this place and went to Dreamworld somewhere. The odds are they went to some place in a completely separate dimension somewhere far away that suited their liking, but they left everything back in this world behind, including the invasive species and all the wild animals. Yeah, pretty irresponsible if you ask me. Who's to say the people of the Forgotten Land didn't build an ultimate spaceship with this new power that allowed them to travel through dimensional rifts, and that would be the Lor Starcutter. Now, it's unclear why they wanted to leave the ship with a four-headed dragon in Halcondra. Maybe Halcondra looked different back then, and that's actually where they all went for a while, but there's a pretty good chance that this ship was made in the same area. It even has the same color schemes that we've seen in Lab Discovera, with the whites and the light blues and electronic glow glowing all the way throughout the ship. It's very familiar. Now, as for the Master Crown, I'm really unsure why this was ever created, because we know that the one who wears the Master Crown will gain extreme power but darken their heart, and we know Landia was able to still withstand the power of the Master Crown and guard it for some reason. But why in the world was this crown made in the first place? Well, I think the crown was always made originally for evil intent. Someone in the Forgotten Land made this crown in order to take over, or to maybe wipe out the civilization themselves. But I have a theory that also goes a little bit further with the Master Crown and its creation. So it's pretty much confirmed that the ancients came from Halcondra, which would probably mean they came from the Forgotten Land, and that's where they traveled to thanks to the Lor Starcutter. So what happened here? It was once a powerful nation in a powerful area, but what happened to cause all this chaos? It was the peaceful land of dreams. What happened? My first theory is once again the rise of power. Somebody amongst the ancients knew that the Lor Starcutter was too powerful, and it was protecting everybody, so they needed to create an opposite, a counter weapon, such as the Master Crown, which would take the evil from one's heart and expand it and create monsters. First thing we see when we get to Halcondra is we crash land in Egg Engines, which seems to be a bustling city full of Halcondrians walking around and performing everyday duties. Now, what happened with this place? It's all dark and gloomy, and metal scraps seem to wrap every single building and bridge in the background. It almost seems like it's been kind of taken over or kind of controlled by some other source. In fact, all the metal buildings and everything surrounding this world looks very familiar to that of Lab Discovera on Redgar, with all the factory buildings and maybe even some of the buildings within the Forgotten Lands green areas. Now clearly these aren't the same places, these are two separate worlds, but my theory is that maybe some of the architecture moved on from the Forgotten Land and was inspiration to build Egg Engines. Whoever took over and built Egg Engines seems to put all the Halcondrians into slavery, which are still once again the ancients based on what we're saying from the Forgotten Land. So maybe they put them into slavery to walk around and to run this factory for years and years and years, and as you can tell, they don't ever really look happy, like they're just running this place and they have nothing else to do. Now it's the treadmill part that seems to pull me in specifically. It seems to run Egg Engines, and that's how they keep things going. And we've seen this in the Forgotten Land because Leongar uses the Waddle Dees that he captured in order to run the facility at Lab Discovera, which I am pretty sure that Leongar didn't make all of these different treadmills in order to run the place. This was something that was already in production before he even found Lab Discovera, and each unit with the treadmills looks very much the same size as the Halcondrians. They could definitely run on them as well. So my theory is the Halcondrians were actually here in the Forgotten Land helping to run Lab Discovera, which means this place that seemed nice with theme parks and extra gizmos and gadgets and stuff for people to do and have fun and food and cafeterias and malls wasn't all built on good. Just like the real life, there is corruption in the government, and it seems like they were controlling some of the residents of this land in order to have them run this laboratory in the first place. I'm not saying that all the residents of Lab Discovera were evil or had evil intent. Maybe some of them realized their bad actions and wanted to start again in a new world, so helped to build the Lor Starcutter, but while some of them also loved what they did already and wanted to keep that slave kind of mentality going in the next world they got to. So in secret, they also built the Master Crown, or at least one of them did, in order to take over when he needed to. Something else very interesting is whoever this evil ruler was, the one that wore the Master Crown, maybe was even in charge of making the Metal General, as we actually have new game dialogue for the Metal General X that states, long ago the soulless battle robot Metal General would be dispatched by its master to visit other planets and exterminate their foes. Now it serves as security, guarding this spot for eternity. It also states, forced to work security long after its master's death, this robot uses AI to maintain itself and control the machines of Egg Engines. It has a wide variety of advanced features, but still no heart. So yeah, that's pretty ruthless. This robot was designed to go to different worlds and destroy anybody that was a threat. And maybe this was just out of the fact that they were afraid of anybody ever returning trying to kill them again, just same way Fecto Elphalus did that one tragic day. So now, whoever was in charge was preparing for anything that could come and hurt the new civilians of this world. Which once again makes me think that this was all thanks to one power-hungry Halcondrian, or technically Forgotten Landian, I guess we could call for right now, who actually built the Master Crown and used it to take over and just cause havoc for everybody. Now this brings me to the Magolor epilogue, the final boss fight with Magolor versus the Master Crown. They get warped from the ethereal altar to some new dimension, and it looks kind of like Halcondra's Egg Engines once again, and also a mix of the Forgotten Land. But at first I really did think this was the Forgotten Land until you look at all the buildings, as they do look familiar, they're also all coated in that scrap metal once again, which could very well still be egg engines, but kind of a back in time situation where this apocalypse is happening in the background as you're fighting the Master Crown. Now, I don't think that the Master Crown has anything to do with the apocalypse in the background. I think they were just both warped here in order to fight with that happening, but as you can tell, all the buildings are being crushed and everything is kind of being destroyed, and maybe this is what happened to Halcondra. Maybe this is what made it the kind of volcanic wasteland in the first place, and we're just kind of fighting while everything's happening in the background. So yes, this is my theory where Halcondra fell. From whoever took over and rose with the Master Crown, they caused absolute chaos to pursue all over this world. And it ended up destroying everything, which could also mean that maybe this chaos was made on purpose. Maybe someone took over completely and kind of roboticized the entire world, and the only option left was to burn it all down using the power of the Lor Starcutter and the Master Crown in order to bring a fiery apocalypse from the sky. But either way, maybe this is the entire story. And then at the very end, when there was nothing left and almost everybody of the ancients was completely wiped out, they were able to pass on the Lor Starcutter and obviously the Master Crown to Landia. Now, where does Landia come in and who is Landia? Well, that's probably for another video, but it is a sacred dragon that did entrust the duty of protecting these two relics, and it did so for a very long time. So let's wrap up the story. So it all starts in the Forgotten Land. Fecto-Elfless invades, and somehow the Forgotten Land is able to capture this creature and isolate it in containment, where they're able to use its own power to create crazy devices, such as the Lor Starcutter and the Master Crown, which are devices able to open up dimensional rifts, which they use the Lor Starcutter to travel with that dimensional rift and leave everything behind of their now ruined world, thanks to Fecto-Elfless, where they move on to Halcondra. Once they arrive, one of the leaders or scientists of that world decides to make a device such as the Master Crown, which they probably used pieces of the Lor Starcutter in order to create, which allows them to have immaculate power, but also at the same time makes their hearts harden and full of evil, which they then use to take over this land, created egg engines, and enslaved the race. Thanks to the evil of that crown, or maybe a last second resort option in order to burn everything down to the ground, a fiery apocalypse is summoned and it destroys everything of Halcondra, bringing it to a burning wasteland. With the dying breath of the ancients, they give the Lor Starcutter and the Master Crown over to Landia, knowing that an evil threat could come to this land one day in the future in order to take over, as Magolor did. And that could be the great connection between Kirby and the Forgotten Land and Kirby's return to Dreamland, because it kind of connects together based on the events of Magolor's epilogue as well. There's a lot of cool things connecting, and I'm not even talking about, once again, the butterfly being there, which we know is Morpho Knight, but there's just so many connections where it does make me wonder if HAL Labs actually just wanted to tell this story again for a connection purpose that kind of tied into their latest and greatest game, The Forgotten Land. But let me know in the comments down below if you guys found any other connections and have any other theories that go alongside mine. And if you enjoyed this video, please stop what you're doing. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe if you want to hear more videos like this about the Kirby franchise and also just videos about Nintendo in general. But thank you guys so much for tuning in, and like always, I'll see you all on the next one. See you guys.